I've got many attending peace for are you a school?
Hi everyone, this is Doug Melia. This is the Same Kit Different Day podcast, and today I've got a special guest, Bethany's dad, Jeremy. How are you, Jeremy?
Hi, morning. Yeah, I'm really good. Really good.
And how's the lockdown treating you so far?
I'm loving it. I've developed a bit of a wine habit, a scone habit, and putting on pounds of weight like everybody else. But,
excellent. That sounds good. Well, we've been operating from home, just trying to assist and help everyone, really, more than anything. But there's restrictions on ourselves going out and doing training and things like that. One of the things I wanted to say to you, it does feel very ironic that the people that we're locking up in society are the most well versed to this kind of thing now, and we could learn a few things from people that have been sort of in captivity, I think.
It's one of those things that talking to my daughter, really does come out. That she said, "I'm the expert in this. I can do this." And she said,
excellent. So for our listeners, if you could tell us a bit about who you are, about your relationship with your daughter, and about some of the things that you've been through, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Bethany's dad, Jeremy. My daughter Beth is autistic. She was diagnosed around about the age of 6. Her part of the spectrum is pathological demand avoidance. So anything that puts demand on Beth causes huge amounts of anxiety, and that will often display as quite challenging behaviour. Beth has been in the past very aggressive, very violent. It's just her mechanism. It's the way she's wired. Anything that she finds anxious, she automatically goes into fight or flight response. If she can get away, she'll run away. If she can't, her body instinct is just to become challenging. That led to Beth, having to go into residential schooling quite early on. We couldn't get the diagnosis of demand avoidance. So just having autism as a diagnosis, people were putting boundaries and timetables in place to deal with Beth. Boundaries, timetables, their demands. So it was making her gradually worse and worse. That cycle ended with Beth being placed in secure units.
Right.
That's the ultimate demand, to lock somebody away with a, I can't imagine at the age of 11, which was Beth's first time in a secure unit, being put on a ward with sort of 30 other people with challenging needs themselves. But it resulted in another hospitalisation that began a little over 3 years ago in St Andrews in Northampton. They have this £40 million hospital, 100 beds. And Beth went in there, and within 2 weeks, they locked her in a cell because they said, she is so dangerous, so challenging. The only way to deal with Beth is to lock her away. She was subjected to almost daily restraints. And it was horrific. The first time I went to see Beth in the seclusion room, as they call it, I was taken down a corridor through a series of doors that were unlocked before me. And there at the end of the corridor was my daughter stood behind a big perspex window in a tiny cell. And my contact with my daughter was to kneel down at a hatch at that door. It was barbaric, absolutely barbaric.
If you did that kind of thing to an animal in our society, you'd be locked up for it. If you put an animal in a room at home and you didn't let it have interaction and you fed it intermittently, you'd face criminal charges. But for some reason, in learning disability, it seems to have been accepted, doesn't it?
Oh, it goes far deeper than that. Um, the the unit did not specialise in autism, despite
Right.
stating in all their advertising that they do. But yes, maybe the
Yeah.
psychologist, the psychiatrist, that they know.
Yeah.
But the staff who deal day to day with the care of people like Beth, they
Mm.
are little more than, in my view, security guards. They sit
Yeah.
outside these locked rooms. It's up to them if they decide they want to interact with the person behind the door. If they want to sit and
Right.
read a book, they'll sit and read a book.
Yes.
Also, a really heavy reliance on agency staff, which for
Yes.
someone like Beth, who takes a long, long time to develop a relationship with
Mm.
somebody, if you put a carer with Beth for 24 hours, Beth instantly becomes very anxious.
Yeah.
Her body language changes, the way she speaks to that person will change because all of her
Yeah.
barriers have gone up. It's her,
Of course.
it's how she's wired to respond. It's not something she chooses to do. So the
No.
staff will then either, go, oh, I'm not going to speak to you, or
Yes.
they're not trained in dealing properly, communicating with Beth. So
No.
they will become argumentative. They will tell her, oh, don't say that to me. There's a demand
Yeah.
on Beth. Beth's behaviour
Yeah.
escalates. The key just gets turned further and further in that lock.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that there's a lack of emphasis for me on the de-escalation side of things. I mean, one good thing that the new laws have brought about, and organisations like the Restraint Reduction Network, is they're putting in criteria to say people have to have some kind of experience in positive behaviour support. They shouldn't just have the. For me, I'm a conflict resolution and restraint trainer by trade, and the conflict resolution, it always seemed to be geared as if you were a police officer or a security guard, and it would teach people things like putting your hand up and showing non-confrontational body language, when really they should be doing on a course on how to get to know people, showing a bit of empathy, and maybe trying not to just label people as dangers, if you like, because to us it's violence and aggression, but to somebody it's their way of expressing themselves, isn't it?
Absolutely. When Beth was moved to a unit in Wales a little over 12
Mm.
months ago, I was asked to go in and to tell the staff about Beth and to teach the
Great.
staff about PDA approaches. The first question
Yes.
I asked the staff is, who's been trained in restraint? Everybody put their
Yes.
hand up. So, okay,
Yes.
who's been trained in de-escalation? Not a single one that had any
Wow.
training at all around that.
No. No.
That's
It's yeah, I mean, it's for some organisations. I see it as like it's a tick box exercise sometimes, and because ultimately, when someone gets injured or when somebody gets sued or disciplined, it tends to be because a physical intervention has taken place. So they say, right, that's how injury happens. Let's make sure everyone's trained. So they've got a tick in a box. Well, couldn't half those interventions have been avoided in the first place by, like you say, from somebody like yourself who's an expert by experience, giving them a bit of an insight into what to expect and how to manage it?
yeah, yeah. What they
It'll
basically
make
did with
much more
Beth
sense.
is they got her to the point that she was so bored and frustrated and anxious, locked away in these cells, that
Yeah.
when they did open the door, she would fly at them. She would try and get out.
Yes.
They saw
Yeah.
that as Beth being aggressive, abusive, and that became a reason to not even open the door. Or to
No.
I witnessed Beth being given her lunch one day, and Beth had to walk to the extreme corner of the cell, sit on the
Right.
floor with her legs in the air, at which
Right.
point they opened the door, slid the food in, and slammed the door. It was like
Wow.
feeding a vicious dog. It was,
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you talked about the perspex screen, I had visions of like Hannibal Lecter, and when we set, when we set, I mean, the prison system in the UK. I do quite a lot of work overseas, and overseas there's still a heavily reliance on solitary confinement. So if you misbehave, or even if you don't follow certain rules, then you're put in solitary and they can keep you there for a considerable amount of time. Now, in the UK prison system, if people are that dangerous or are that unwell, we give them treatment. So they tend to go across to places like Rampton, Broadmoor, where the solitary will be managed safely so they can at least integrate. And for me, there doesn't seem to be a differentiation between people with a learning difficulty or a learning disability, whatever your term for it wants to be, and these people who are sort of forensic patients who are guilty of crimes, and they're having to put them in safe places. I mean, when you consider the level of violence that those people have offered compared to the pathological avoidance you're telling me about, it's got to be treated differently, surely.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Beth's own journey. We escaped Beth going to Rampton by a hair's width.
Right. Yeah.
Beth was in the horrific St Andrews. She then was moved to it was a psychiatric intensive care bed
Right.
temporarily in Staffordshire. They were brilliant. They had staff that were trained in de-escalation, and they first of all they really heavily medicated Beth, which was a horrible thing to see. But the psychologist, he took Beth out into the grounds, played badminton with her, just opened up a little bit, built up a relationship, allowed staff to do the same, and we saw Beth really turn a corner at that point. Unfortunately, it was an adolescent bed, and Bethany turned 18, so she had to be moved. We expected commissioning to look at what had been done in that PICU, to learn from that, and to find a suitable placement that could mirror those, the distance that had been travelled.
Yes.
We were utterly horrified when Beth was moved to a unit in Wales. It didn't even, it knew nothing of autism.
Right.
It was a unit for people with personality disorders.
Yeah,
Beth does
like
not have
I said
a
before,
disorder, she has autism. And within just months, Beth, she was locked away from the day she got there. Within weeks, they were refusing to open the door. Then they were saying, she needs to go to a high secure facility. We're going to recommend that Rampton come in and assess Beth for transfer there. And we were utterly horrified.
You wonder how it's got to that. Yeah.
Well, they admitted
They
admitted in a care treatment review meeting, the reason for that request is they hadn't got the staff or the facilities to care for Beth. So it was never about Beth's presentation. It was about their shortcomings.
No.
Truly horrific.
So I know that there's been a challenge around the legality of certain restraints from the Human Rights Commission. And that's really where that comes in, because the European Convention Standard on Human Rights, it talks about you having the suitable staff. Now, suitable for me should mean, number one, they should like working with those people in the sector. I always used to say, I did a lot of work in schools when I left school, teaching confidence building, karate and judo, things like that. And I could never work out these teachers who didn't seem to like kids. And I just thought, if you're going to go into a profession, surely make sure you want to work with the people. So I think the suitability of staff, let's check they want the job and they're not just doing it because it's the only job they can get, or it suits their time, or it's close to home, for whatever the reasons people take jobs. They've got to be suitable in that they can actually physically do the job. Restraint is a necessary evil. There are places and times for it. And I sometimes look at some security operatives, and I don't know if you could actually sort of stand up yourself or maintain yourself. So they've got to be physically able for some aspects of the job, but they've got to be suitable in that there's a level of political correctness there. They know how to speak to people. There's a level of empathy as well, and experience more than anything. And the suitability, but it also says in the Human Rights Commission, their numbers. So when people say to me, "Oh, we can't deal with this because we haven't got the numbers," well, it's actually against the law.
Yeah.
They need to have the correct numbers and the correct risk assessment. Otherwise, they shouldn't open. And it infuriates me when it's private places. Because, okay, if it's NHS places, you can say, yeah, there's a strain on the system. But if it's a private place, okay, you say you're a not-for-profit, but I've seen what the directors are getting paid and what people are getting paid. So surely, put some staff on the floor. Is that the same as your experience?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the ex-chief exec of St Andrews, over £500,000 a year as a wage.
Yeah.
Staff, and doing the research for all the media stuff that I've done with Beth. One of the horrific finds was to find out, and you can go online and you can look for these adverts, and you'll still find them.
Yeah.
A carer on the wards at St Andrews Hospital is paid less per hour than the person washing the pots in the kitchen.
Wow, and the level of responsibility that's there, and the risk factor.
And you will find those adverts even for quite specific roles for people with acquired brain injuries, and they are on absolute minimum wage. And until caring is seen as a professional career,
yes,
it is remunerated, because it's a bloody tough job. Yeah. These people work long hours in quite extreme circumstances. A lot of them are very, very dedicated, and they are not paid the right way, and they are not seen by society in the right way. Caring is a profession, and until there is, the right professional career progression, proper apprenticeships, it will never become a destination occupation, which is what we need. This is why these wards are so full of agency staff and, let's face it, people that aren't doing the job because they see it as something they want to be doing for years and years and years as a career. A lot of them, they're young students, earning a bit of money while they're going through university, taking a gap year, etc. We need to change that, because who they are looking for are some of the most needy people in our community.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the wages, if you without putting that wage bracket up, or without maybe putting the perks, I mean, I know the latest was giving them a little green badge that said carer, but there needs to be a little bit more credence than that. Like you say, pathways are great. And I do know there are some pathways from a higher level care assistant into nursing. And it does appear that, again, I'm maybe a bit of a skeptic, but to increase the number of nurses, maybe they're making that pathway easier. But until it has that respect, you're going to have people that are doing it who don't particularly want to do the job. For me, it makes a pathway to abuse a little bit. It makes if it's quite easy to get in, and it's low paid, not a lot of people are going to want to do it. If you are inclined that way to take opportunity of someone, or you're a predator, then there's a gateway for you, definitely, isn't there?
Absolutely. And we have seen staff that have been in a local unit doing a 12-hour shift on the agency, that have then turned up for a shift at St Andrews. They're working 2 12-hour shifts back to back without a break. It's no wonder we keep hearing of patients being found with staff sitting outside the rooms who are fast asleep. There is no monitoring of the hours that some of these people are doing.
No, but you've got tachographs for lorries, as you know, and you've got measures in place that keep people from doing it. But you're right on that. I mean, when I first left school, I ended up teaching martial arts, and I used to do self-defense in schools. But I worked as a nightclub doorman, and I'd have to police myself with that. But that was sort of back in the day. So I'd work in the daytime, then I'd do that shift in the evening. And sometimes I was tired from that. And you're getting more and more security companies now that are recognizing, we need you to disclose on your CV who else you're working for, partly so it's not a conflict of interest, and the hours that you're doing, so we can keep you safe. What I'd say on training as well is, I've seen people that have had a job as a care assistant, let's say at a children's home, and then they've gone to get a job somewhere else, and they've then been forced to do extra training. So they'll very often just sign them off an APL. They'll say, oh, you've already covered this kind of stuff, but we need you to do our restraint package. So there it is again. They've perhaps done behaviour management, they've done restraint, and they say, oh, it might be a slightly different type of restraint to us, so we need to get you on another course. So you've got some people, and they come on the courses moaning because they don't want to have to do it again. But they're having physical skills replanted in their brains, muscle memory over and over again, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but not much behaviour stuff again.
Absolutely. And I have seen Beth restrained, and when those restraints have been broken, staff that have turned around and high-fived each other.
Oh, that's awful. Absolutely awful.
Done a great
I've seen the same. I've seen the same in prison. There's been some footage released from prisons recently, and I've seen similar accounts of that. So that does bring me on to my next question. What are your views on more CCTV or even body-worn cameras within these kind of establishments?
I think anybody who is averse to CCTV has something to hide.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't. I wouldn't get in my car and drive a route home that avoids all of the speed cameras. Well,
you wouldn't be able to, but I get your point.
Yeah. For me, video footage is preventative, but it is also something that when that patient turns around and says, in that restraint, I was hurt, I was touched inappropriately, that there is some evidence there. Because at the moment, when those things happen, and trust me, they happen a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Without video footage, there is no support for the patient's claim. You're up against a team of staff who will always back each other up. So, I am for video coverage completely.
Oh, that's good. I mean, from just studying some of the footage from the States and also from across Europe, we work with Australia quite a lot. We've spoke to staff and they've said, look, if I hadn't had this body-worn camera, it would have gone the opposite way. And that's sometimes where rogue staff have acted in a certain way, and they've had to go against them and sort of whistle blow on it. So I haven't seen any negative feedback from body-worn cameras. I know there's a couple of campaigns as well for CCTV in care homes, and I remember, and we've all got a personal sort of story to tell. Mine's slightly different, but my granddad ended up in a care home at sort of 97, and it was just one of those where I just felt I couldn't keep an eye on him, and we went to some extents of putting cameras in things, and maybe we boarded a few laws to try and keep things constant and keep things happy there. But without the CCTV, it's just blind trust. And like you say, the agency staff who were coming in and out, I remember my granddad said to me, oh, I got shouted at the other night. And I said, why? He said, oh, well, I'd been doing some cutting out of a magazine and I put the paper that I'd left over in my cup. Well, he didn't have a waste bin in his room. So after that, he got chastised for that. He then lost his confidence to cut things out or do basically things that he liked to do. And he's stuck in his room. And I think if someone was on CCTV, they'd think twice about that. They certainly would think twice about any kind of interaction with a patient, surely, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. You've only got to look at the Winterbourne scandal, the Walton Hall scandal. They came out because of video footage.
That's right. Yeah.
That is evidence you cannot argue against. The abuse is happening. The abuse is happening in these places.
So one of the things I am refreshed about talking to you, whenever I speak to experts by experience, they've always got their own angle that they're coming from. 2 observations I made. The first observation was you used the term violence and aggression, and I think there's quite a lot of semantics goes on at the moment. And I've done a couple of conferences where I've talked about things, and people have said, "Oh, you've offended me," and I've said, "Why?" And they've said, "Oh, well, you described it as violence and aggression, or you described it as somebody kicking off and things like that." Well, I said, "Well, how should I have?" Well, we'd like to refer to it as behaviour that challenges challenges. And I think there's always effort to sort of segment things or even call things different things. So the use of seclusion, like, or locking someone in a room, they might say, oh, it's a time out. And for me, I like how you use those terms, because they're the terms people understand. And I think if you soften sort of terms sometimes, like restraint becomes therapeutic holds or something like that, it can really make it fly under the radar. There's quite a dangerous technique called a basket hold, where arms are wrapped across somebody's body and they're held from behind, which is, I don't teach it, and none of the trainers we work with teach it, but I know people are out there teaching it, calling it a wrap or a small child hold or a tantrum hold. And I think it's important that, okay, we're going to move with the times and we're going to change the names of things slightly, but let's not change them too much. Otherwise, it will get written into an incident report. An HSE inspector or a judge might read it and say, well, it was just a therapeutic hold. So what's the problem with that?
Absolutely.
Have you come across that semantics before?
At the moment, the country is under lockdown. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're all saying, oh, I really want to go out to the park. I bet nobody has turned around to a family member and gone, oh, I want to access the community.
Exactly.
Another one of those phrases that,
yes.
Why does going into a hospital mean going outside of a hospital becomes accessing the community? It's going out for a walk. It's
yes.
not.
Yeah. No. And you've got patients, but unfortunately patients buy into it, and then patients start using that language, and it's talking themselves into getting worse sometimes. I think a deterioration in their health, because it isn't natural to start talking to people about the interactions you've had today. You say I had a chat with someone, wouldn't you? And there's been a drive. I know I met a gentleman from Merseycare who was doing something, and he was saying, let's have the basics there. You don't go home and say to your partner, oh, I've had a mild bout of depression today. You say, I felt a bit low. And maybe we need to talk to the patients in a more structured language that actually means something to them.
Absolutely. And Beth,
and the other thing I picked up on
is totally institutionalized after 3 years of,
yes,
hospitalized lingo. So
yeah,
she doesn't actually say what's the other one. She doesn't have lessons or go to school. She accesses education. It's just
so the other thing I picked up on, was about how you talk about restraint, and I think you're sensible enough to understand that some people some people in their journey to recovery, they may need to be physically held. They may need to be restrained, sometimes for their own safety. And I'm glad I can see you nodding and you accept that, because there's been a drive with some people, and they've been saying things to me like, we want to ban restraint, or we want to ban seclusion. And I always say to those people, what would a society without restraint or without seclusion look like? It would be lawless. And if we say to teachers in schools, right, you must never seclude a child, or you must never lock a child in a room, well, there may be times where staff can't hold someone, and they might get injured, or you might have some people that don't want to be held ever. They don't want to be held. So to them, giving them an area to calm down in, maybe not even a room, maybe a schoolyard or a playing field or something where you can just let them have a bit of space. And it's necessary, because the moment that we ban the act of containing somebody within community settings, I think restraints will go up. That's my danger. If tomorrow the government says, right, you're not allowed to contain a child, well, how would that work with them running out the school gates? Because we stop them running out the school gates if there's busy roads there. Well, if the alternative to them being in a room on their own is 4 staff on top of them holding them, surely that increases the risk of death. Does that make sense to you?
In a way. Now, I will have to say, I see restraint, seclusion, particularly restraint, as failure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from with that.
I really do. It is the ultimate last resort. When everything else that is physically possible to do has been exhausted and tried, then it may be necessary. Within
Yes.
hospital environments, the very environment is wrong. You know, you
Yes.
cannot take people who need to run away to escape that anxiety, to get themselves away from the cause of anxiety. The moment you
Yeah.
restrict that, you know, you will get challenging behaviour. That will
Of
result
course.
in staff wanting to protect themselves and the patient. The alarms go off, a dozen people come in and pile on that person. If that person instead had the safe place to bolt to, or in the
Yes.
first place had the staff that understood and could realise that behaviours were beginning to escalate and could then
Yeah.
step in and de-escalate and divert, the
Yes.
restraint is completely avoidable. The system at
Yeah.
the moment does not have that level of, and I'll use the word expertise. It takes experts to step in, distract, divert, and change the behaviour that's beginning.
Yes, I agree 100% with that. There's a gentleman I spoke to who's one of our trainers in another country, and we were having a chat this morning because he said there was a gentleman going through palliative care. He was refusing treatment, and they needed to get a line in him to give him some medication to ease his pain. And the staff said, "Look, we need to restrain him. We need to mechanically restrain him." Now in the UK, we don't fasten or strap people to beds. But in other countries they do. So we basically went in, had a chat with the guy, held his hands whilst they put a line into him, and he said, "Look, because I held his hands, it was still classed as an intervention, and I had to write it down." He said, "But at least after that, he could die with a little bit of dignity." Now this is the sort of the far end of the spectrum, but I just thought, yeah, because where somebody's combative, the instant thing is right. They need restraining, they need holding, and I think a lot of the practical demonstrations, you say, the expertise comes from people that are good at the moves or they're good at the holds, and they'll show the staff how to do it. And the pressure testing they'll do will often involve somebody rolling around with someone or somebody holding somebody, and then, like you say, it's all high fives, and they physically bruise. When people say to me, "Oh, I've done my training, I'm in agony," and I think, well, surely something's gone wrong there, because if you're in agony from having to hold someone that's struggling and you're tired, that's bound to fail in reality. If you're injured because you've been hurt by the people that were restraining you, then we need to go back to before that. I think the expertise should come from repeated. Let's look at the challenges we've had on our sheets, and let's create some scenarios around the patient. If we've got a scenario based around the patient's behaviour, what kind of things they need, what they've been exposed to, and then let's run that with every member of staff. And I think you'd see a lot of people stuttering and going wrong and going blank. That's where I think people should be tested, instead of the pinning people down and restraining them.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was the biggest incident that Beth had to date was in St Andrews.
Right.
Beth was on 3-to-1 staffing,
Right.
but for whatever reason, staff hadn't turned up for shift, and Beth was left with no staff at all.
Right.
Apparently, they were observing her via video, via CCTV. Beth becomes upset by this because she wants somebody to talk to. So she uses she used a sofa as a battering ram,
Right.
and she actually put it into the door. And that door started to give way. A member of staff came in, put her keys in the lock. The door burst open with Beth battering it. The member of staff ran away, leaving Beth with a set of keys. Now, all the staff needed to do was go to the door either end of the corridor, turn their keys in the doors. Beth could not get anywhere. Instead of that, all the panic alarms go off and the police were called. 19 police officers attended. Beth was pepper sprayed, legs strapped, and handcuffed. Beth was still being combative at that point. Because when Beth has a PDA, anxiety-driven meltdown. She will not back down.
No.
That episode was ended by a very young, very small police officer who made everybody else leave. She sat on the floor next to Beth and she just talked to her. She said,
Yes.
what do we need to do to help you end this?
Brilliant.
And Beth was, just let me have 10 minutes to cool down in the corridor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. See, there's a memory.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
That incident was investigated by St Andrews.
Yes.
Everything was blamed on Bethany. Absolutely everything.
Yeah.
The fact that the door in a secure unit was able to be knocked down by a piece of furniture, that didn't even appear in the report.
Right.
It's
so it was quite a select report, was it?
Oh, utterly.
So there's a memorandum of understanding between the police and psychiatric units. It's a few years old now, and one of the things that it talks about, organisations being trained to manage things, because the danger is when all options are exhausted, and I do appreciate in some PQs in some places there will come a point where there's... Can you hear me now?
Just about.
Oh, excellent, good. So the member, I can cut that out. It's fine. Is that any better?
Just about.
Okay, good. There's a memorandum of understanding between the police and psychiatric units. What it talks about is having the correct staff, having staff who are trained, and the whole reason for that is because if you call the police come and the police do police stuff. So like you say, they hold people on the floor, they use handcuffs, they might even use incapacitant sprays, or worst case scenario, they might even end up tasing somebody. And one of the things they talk about is having staff trained, and they even talk about the use of mechanical restraints or soft restraints to say, look, we're going to come and we're going to hold this person, and even the police won't hold someone down for a prolonged period of time. They will then restrain them in a way that they can calm down. Now, instead of handcuffs, the police woman, as you said there, she contained the area, so she contained them in. And for me, in psychiatric units, that's what the emergency procedures should be. They may need to have some form of training in riot shields and PPE gear, but having a look at how you can lock down aspects of a unit to stop somebody from going out somewhere. The building should be risk assessed anyway, so that they can be safe in there, because a lot of the time they're safe on their own. I think everything should be in place to stop the police being called. But I mean, in that circumstance, it does sound like that police officer is the one that saved Beth from further harm.
Oh, she was being threatened with a taser, so absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So moving forwards, there's a lot of changes sort of going on. There's a restraint reduction network which are putting out a lot of good guidance and advice out there. In an ideal world, how do you see the framework changing? You see CCTV as a part of it, is that correct?
I think CCTV will be a very big part of it.
And regards staffing. Oh, it's all right. Sorry. It went bad again there. And regards training, have you attended any physical restraint classes yourselves? Have you ever been invited down to go on a course to see what staff are taught?
No. And the way Beth is being cared for now, that does not apply.
No, because it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
No. So could you tell me, just before we wrap up for today, could you tell me then what changes have been made at the new place where Beth is compared to the place she's been in the past? I mean, what's the difference? What's making it work where she is now?
The people, the environment.
Yes. Okay.
Beth is she's still in secure services. She cannot
Yes.
cope with the community at the moment. It's been tried, but as the legal statements after the damages claim, Beth has been damaged by her experiences. She cannot cope with the community.
Right.
Beth is in an environment where she has a huge flat to herself.
Yes.
It has a huge, beautiful garden Beth can access. Yep. It has a high stimulus bedroom with all of her belongings, yep, activities, but she can, if she wants to, choose a low stimulus environment as well.
Right.
But the staff all are trained in autism, and they are all fully trained in PDA.
Yep.
They're all part of the Merseycare Restraint Reduction Network. So they know how to de-escalate.
Yeah.
Restraint is the absolute last, and they see it as an absolute failure of care.
Yes.
If Beth has an incident, they look at it from oh God, what have we done that let Beth down? What did we do wrong? We have got this wrong. But it's all about having the right approach to Beth. So they don't make demands.
No.
They will give Beth choices. If they want Beth to do something at 4 o'clock, then you'll say, do you want to do it at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or 4 o'clock?
Yeah, a supposition. Yeah, so you're supposing to the person that they're going to do it. You're just giving a couple of different options. Perfect. Yeah. That's perfect.
I like Beth what you say about... go for the latest one. But you'll also say to Beth, the staff will say, we'd like to do this today. Yeah. How do you see as being the best way to do that? So it puts Beth in charge of the process.
Yeah.
One of Beth's things that totally de-stresses her is role play.
Right.
She loves role play because when she writes the scripts or tells people what to do, that feeds into her demand avoidance. It gives her control.
Okay. Right.
I have turned up for contact there to find staff all dressed as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles doing role play, acting the fool.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And they happily do it because they know if they do that, if they meet Beth at her level, then her anxieties have gone. And everybody's happier. Yeah. They're not having to sit on her and hold her to the floor. Beth's not in a situation where she's bouncing off the walls. Everyone's happy. The mileage Beth has made in the 5 months she's been there, she now goes out, and I don't mean goes out into the grounds. She goes out to the shops. She goes out for walks. Obviously, lockdown. It was quite a shame because just as Beth started to have all this ultimate freedom, we hit lockdown. Yeah. And I think that's the big measure, is even though Beth was given all of that and then it was taken away, Beth's accepted it and the staff have helped her.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
But just masses of distance travelled. She loves where she is. She sent me video the other day because unlike a secure unit, we can talk on Zoom, we can talk on Messenger like we're talking now. We have video calls. Yeah. She can send me pictures. There's a picture of Beth sitting in the garden with ducklings that are nesting in the garden. And they're all over Beth. Beth has got a garden with a paddling pool. She's got her pet guinea pigs. So all of these ridiculous blanket policies that secure units have, this unit has looked at them and gone, which of those do we actually need?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, okay, Beth can't have access to sharp knives in the kitchen. Yeah, that's understandable. But Whereas in secure units, I have seen Beth being given a breakfast in like a polystyrene tray that you'd have McDonald's food in. And
Right.
to eat Weetabix, she would have to break the corner off that tray and scoop the food into her mouth. Yeah.
Wow.
Beth has knives and forks and normal cutlery and all of that now
Yeah.
because it's all about a positive approach.
Yes.
Yeah. Beth loves it,
Yeah.
responds to it, and she loves life. She loves being where she is at the moment. They are an amazing bunch of dedicated people. They
That's
really are.
great. It's great to hear. It's great to hear a positive story. I mean, I do a lot of training in the UK, but I do work in Australia, and I visited a hospital in Australia, and I was amazed that they had hens just roaming freely. The patients collected the eggs. There was a lot of things that, and I walked in and I looked at some furniture, and I thought, should that furniture really be there? But I think it's because they've got enough staff. Everything's a person-centered approach, and if there's an area of the hospital where there are things that people maybe can't access because at that period, that part of their journey, they might not be deemed to be safe being around them, then don't give them access. But if you've got, like you say, if they've got someone eating from a polystyrene tray with the corner of the tray, that indicates to me that the level of risk from them to others and to themselves is massively high. My concern there is, how do you come down from that? Because you've put that in place where they're not allowed to have these things. They're making a bit of an issue out of it. If I was not allowed those things, the next time I got a pen in my hand, I might be thinking, well, what am I meant to do with it? Why have I not done it? I think that too many restrictions, it creates mythical monsters. So that's a term that I heard used at Broadmoor, and they'll say, people will say, oh, this person's done this or they've done that. And they're looking at examples like you speak of, where a couch has been used to hit a door. Now, when that's on paper and it's relayed later on, I mean, you relayed it to me in a great way, that would indicate to someone to say, right, well, if this person's coming here, we need to give them nothing. How about giving them a chance, maybe? How about when they arrive, giving them a proper assessment and a chance? If the staff are trained properly, they'll be able to manage any kind of risks and then just go from there, rather than starting with all the restrictions in place and expecting failure.
And that's exactly what happened when Beth moved. You know, she was at that horrific unit in Wales that I spoke of, where they wouldn't even open the door towards the end.
No.
Beth went from that environment onto a minibus. She travelled for 4 hours up to near Preston, where she is now. They took her out of the minibus, took her into a flat. She sat down on a normal settee, given a cup of tea, mum and dad there. She's given her food with a normal set of cutlery, sit in the lounge, watch a TV, and cuddle the guinea pigs.
Perfect. What more could anyone want?
And the number of incidents, the incidents don't get measured in minutes or hours now, as in, she might have 3 an hour.
Yeah.
They measure the number of incidents on a calendar now.
Right.
She goes amazing. weeks without episodes of high anxiety because the right people are doing the right thing in the right setting.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think hospital treatment achieved nothing for Bethany.
Right.
It didn't change her. It didn't cure her. It didn't heal her. It made her worse.
Yes.
An awful lot of unpicking to do now with Beth, and that process is beginning.
Yeah, I think that I'm hoping that this lockdown, when we come out of this lockdown, it's going to make people more sympathetic to some of the people in society who are basically locked up because they've had a taste of their own medicine, and some of the moaning and the people saying how unfair it is that they can't take part in certain activities just because the government says they can't. Well, that's exactly what's going on in learning disability, because people are basing risk assessments on incidents that have happened for the past, or because their behaviour fits into a certain pigeonhole. This is how we're going to treat you. I really do hope it's going to make some changes. Can you see anything changing from people being subjected to this lockdown?
I think so. I think people will also look at the role of carers as well.
Yes.
I think, so many people have gone into care homes as carers on a daily basis, putting their lives at risk. In hospital settings, the same thing as well.
Yes.
So from that point of view, yes. From the whole the loss of liberty that everybody has experienced. Like I said, the
Yeah.
person who's dealt with this best out of our entire family is Bethany, because she's
Yes.
had 3 years of it previously.
Absolutely.
She's
Yeah,
freer
absolutely.
now than she has been for 3 years.
Yeah, I can imagine it. So, Jeremy, before we wrap up, was there anyone you'd like to mention? I know you've talked very highly about this unit where your daughter is now. Is there anyone you'd like to thank or mention?
Everybody who has supported me on Twitter,
Yes.
that has been the savior of my mental health. The
Yes.
offers of help, the support I was given from MENCAP and the
Great.
Equality and Human Rights Commission to
Yes.
fight the legal case around the abuse of Beth's human rights, to organisations like Rightful Lives.
Right.
They're a campaign group that, if your followers haven't come across them before, look up Rightful Lives. A lot of
Yes.
knowledge, a lot of experience there. And to all the other parents and carers that I've met with, families in similar positions, the
Yeah.
support from those guys has been massive. So Isabel Garnett,
Okay.
and Kirsten Peebles, people like that. Just thank you guys. I owe you an awful lot.
Okay, brilliant. Now, we originally spoke, I think we originally spoke on Twitter, but we're definitely going to have a conference. Obviously, the brakes have been put on that quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'll be in touch about getting you down for the conference where you can share your story, and hopefully there'll be some people there that can learn from it. But thank you so much for your time today. Any plans for the rest of today?
It's VE Day. So
Yes.
I'm really lucky because we live in a cul-de-sac. And at the end of the
Oh,
cul-de-sac is a lovely big circle. So,
brilliant.
we can all sit at the end of our drives, be socially distanced,
Yes.
and have a little bit of a VE Day celebration. So,
Excellent. Perfect. Well, enjoy your day. Thank you for coming on, and I'm sure we'll
thank you.
speak again soon.
Okay.
Thanks. All the
Cheers.
best.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye now. Right, that's a wrap. So thanks very much for doing that. It's really insightful, and thanks for sharing it. I'm sure it's going to help for me because by trade I'm a restraint trainer. I don't want to get stuck into that model, if you like. And we're always looking at ways of de-escalation and getting other things in. So to hear from an expert such as yourself, that's great.
Yeah. The restraint is a difficult one, and it's certainly something that the work I'm doing through the CQC, is looking at any type of physical restraint being that, failure of care. Now, I get where you're coming from, because, it's about, especially within a school, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
But that's then looking at what's happening in the school that's triggering the behavior, because at some point, a need isn't being met. And that's what
right.
we should be looking at.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
ultimately an incident will occur that will require restraint, that will trigger that response of, we need to look at this. Why is this occurring?
Yeah.
It is.
The thing, I'll probably send you an email about this as well. See, I'm quite against the regulation of restraint training. What I'm more for is the health and safety executive getting more involved where restraints do happen, and the HSE saying, look, this is like an accident. Like you say, it's a last resort. So if someone's been restrained and injured during a restraint, like if they slipped on a wet floor or like if they fell off a ladder, let's let the HSE look in and see if everything's correct. Because with like the restraint reduction network, it's good, but there aren't really any teeth. Whereas the HSE have got teeth, and I think if they started prosecuting schools or prosecute people for not having things in place like risk assessments and training, I think that would make more waves, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm absolutely dead against reduction training not being done. My background is education. I spent 22 years teaching. And the first thing that you naturally want to do when you're taught a new skill is to go out and use it.
Have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so with restraint, there's that many different types and techniques. You know, you've got to go through quite a few restraints to have gone through your new toolbox.
Yes.
You know, so we should be teaching the opposite, the de-escalation, and get people flexing their skills around that instead.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about managing to de-escalate things. Like, love the example of the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, partly because it was my era, but they'll go home and shine about that. Whereas some of the people I speak to, they say, "Oh, I was involved in a 4-hour restraint the other day. Aren't I great? Aren't I strong? Aren't I macho?" It's taking that mindset away, isn't it? And saying, "No,
absolutely.
Be proud of succeeding."
Beth wanted a water fight the other day, and you know, one of the carers said, "Oh, Beth, I haven't got any clothes to get changed into," and Beth started to get upset because she really wanted a water fight. It was hot.
Yeah.
She's obviously, it's where she lives. She's got clothes she could change into, and the guy just went, "Oh, what can we do as a solution, Beth?" Again, looking back, for Beth, how can we de-escalate myself? And Beth turned around and went, "You could wear some of my clothes." And you know, bloody well did.
That's excellent. That's excellent, isn't it?
And that is the mindset of everybody in that place. You know, how our role exists to help Beth through very difficult times, and that's the way they see it. Yeah, it's not about what's comfortable for them. It's about Beth is the focus. And the fact that Beth is so much easier when she's calm. She's a bloody pleasure to be around.
And where is she now? Is she with the Priory now?
No, Beth is Merseyside.
Oh, that's right, Merseyside. So I'm in Lytham St Anne's, and my office is in Preston. So when you mentioned Preston, I was trying to work out which one it is. Oh, that's good.
The old Calderstone site.
Excellent.
They've got some of the wards that were obviously multi-occupancy wards. They have turned into individual flats.
Right.
So huge open plan space, her own kitchen, obviously her own bathroom.
Yeah.
Like I said, choice of bedrooms, 2 different lounges. Garden. I wish I had the garden. It's massive.
Oh, great. Well, Jeremy, that's excellent. You enjoy your day.
Great stuff.
All the best.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Peace. Bye.